All right, here is our weekly Big Ten recap. In this video, like I do every week, I'm going to be talking about the Big Ten, all the Big Ten teams besides Michigan. I make a separate video on Michigan because I'm a Michigan fan, so if you want to know my thoughts on the Michigan's win over Iowa, go watch my last video. This is about everybody else. We're going to talk about all the teams, how they played, how they looked. I'm gonna give you my Big Ten loser of the week. I do it every week. So that's just the team in the Big Ten that looked the worst this week. And I usually talk about them last, but I might not do that this time. So, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Big Ten. Ohio State, starting from the game that everyone knew this was going to happen. Ohio State wins this game over Rutgers at home, 49-10. C.J. Stroud went 13 of 22, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns, so he didn't really have the day that he usually does, but still a good day nonetheless. Rutgers was tied at 7 with Ohio State early in the first. I knew that wasn't going to last. Ohio State just absolutely demolished them. I mean, Ohio State scored a lot of points, so there's not really much I can say here. Even without Jackson Smith and the Jigba, they blew out Rutgers. We knew this was going to happen. Rutgers is not a good football team. I mean, they got blown out by Iowa last week. They haven't won a meaningful game yet. They're 3-2, but, you know, let's see. Who have they played? Boston College, a 1-point win over Boston College. They beat Wagner. What the hell is a Wagner? Temple by 2 points, and then they lost 27-10 to Iowa and 49-10 to Ohio State. So Rutgers has not necessarily been an impressive team. They won all 3 of their non-conference games, but when it came down to conference play, now they're 0-2. Rutgers off to a bad start, and with as tough as the Big Ten East is, yeah, Rutgers is not in any sort of fight here to get into the Big Ten East race. Or, you know, you already have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State at 5-0, and they're all in the Big Ten East. I mean, they're all falling behind. Rutgers and all those other teams are falling behind. Now, there's still some teams that are in it, but like Maryland, they're still in there. Indiana is still in it, regardless of the fact that they lost. And we'll talk about Indiana later. But yeah, Ohio State looks really good. Rutgers looked really horrible. Not really surprised about this. Even if Rutgers was a decent team, there was no way that Ohio State was losing this game. Ohio State, to me, after watching all the football, I'm making this video after all of the games. Pretty much all the games have ended. The only games that I think are still going on right now is, I think USC is still playing right now, and Oregon and Stanford is going. And there's a Florida game tomorrow against Eastern Washington. Who cares? No one's going to watch that unless you're a Florida fan. But yeah, Ohio State wins. They look like one of the best teams in the country again this week. Alabama also looked really good. Georgia looked really bad. They still won the game against Missouri, but they had to come back and win. They were losing for 3.5 quarters, so they didn't look good this week. So to me, the 2 best teams in the country right now are Alabama and Georgia, or not Alabama, Georgia, Alabama and Ohio State. You can flip-flop those 2 around. I still think Georgia's obviously in that conversation. They had a really bad game. But this isn't about Georgia. We'll talk about them later. Ohio State, but yeah, Ohio State dominates, looks really good. Like I said, Rutgers looks really bad. Penn State, won today. They're 5-0. Didn't look great, honestly. Now, they were never down to Northwestern at home, but they didn't necessarily have, like, a super impressive game either. This Penn State game really came down to Penn State's defense just kind of really limiting Northwestern. Like, Northwestern, anytime they got the ball, couldn't do a damn thing with it. So, I mean, Penn State really just dominated the defensive game, and this is just like old school. To me, this was just old school Big Ten football. Let's look at these here. Sean Clifford, 10 of 20, 140 yards, a touchdown, interception. So, Ryan Helinski attempted 37 passes, only completed 15 of them. So he's under 50% completions. And he had an interception and a touchdown. 210 yards passing. Yeah, I mean, just... It took a while. Penn State really didn't get very much going in the first on offense, just in general. They just kind of slowly but surely pulled away. And even when it was, what was the score at one point? Even when it was 14-7, at one point it was 14-7 in the third quarter. I don't know, it just really wasn't ever in doubt for me. Penn State, to me, was clearly always going to win this game. I just didn't think Northwestern is horrible. Penn State didn't look great today, but they got the win. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they are on a bye week next week. So they can regroup, kind of, you know, rest up or whatever, because they got to go on the road at Michigan in 2 weeks. So that's a big, big game for Penn State. Northwestern, on the other hand, plays Wisconsin next week. Is that next week? Yeah, next week at home. So we'll talk about Wisconsin too. But oh yeah, and let's see, Ohio State has got to play Michigan State next week on the road at East Lansing. Tune into that massacre if you'd like. Michigan State's about to go 2-4 next week. And Rutgers, they play Nebraska on Friday, so that may be a decent game. Who knows? I don't know, probably not. But yeah, Penn State, I mean, didn't look great or anything, weren't super impressive or anything like that, but got the win. They're on a bye week next week, so they don't really got to worry about going down in the rankings. I don't think they'll go down in the rankings. Northwestern's an absolute dumpster fire. I have talked about this, you know, which team is the biggest dumpster fire in the Big Ten this year? Is it Nebraska or Northwestern? Nebraska won today, so to me it's Northwestern, but I mean, of course, that week 0 game, Northwestern did beat Nebraska, but I don't know. I feel like if they played again, Nebraska would definitely win that game. But yeah, Penn State didn't look great offensively, but played pretty much almost lights out defensively. Really, really good on defense. Northwestern is absolutely horrible. And like I said, they play Wisconsin next week. Oh, Minnesota. I've thought about putting you guys on the Big Ten loser this week. And really, I should. That's the thing. I really should. You were favored in this game to win. Purdue is not a good football team. Let's get that cleared up. Purdue is not a good football team. Minnesota went into this game top of the Big Ten West, undefeated, finally in the rankings. They were 21 this week. And they go in at home after beating the life out of Michigan State last week on the road. They come back to home this week to host Purdue, and they lose 20-10. I really should make you guys the Big Ten losers this week. But here's why I'm not. Number one, Purdue tends to do this. Purdue is the type of team, and I've talked about this last week, I talked about it 2 weeks ago. Purdue is the type of team that they will, 1 week they will look like garbage. They'll barely beat a garbage team by 2-3 points, or they'll lose to a garbage team by 2-3 points, but then the very next week beat a highly ranked team. Take 2018, for example, where they destroyed Ohio State on the road. Ohio State was a top 5 school. I mean, and that was Ohio State's only loss that year. And then what did Purdue do after that? They went at home or the next week, and they lost to, I think it was Minnesota, actually. So, and then you can talk about last year. Purdue went up against Michigan State on the road, beat the crap out of Michigan State. That was right after Michigan State beat Michigan, and they were like, what, 7-0, 8-0 in the top 10. Purdue beat them 40-29. So Purdue tends to do stuff like this. Another reason I'm not going to put you guys as the losers, the Big Ten losers this week, is because I still feel like when the season comes to an end, you're going to win the West. Why do I say that? Well, Purdue is a dumpster fire. Or, Purdue's not a dumpster fire. Purdue is not good. They're inconsistent. Northwestern is garbage. Iowa is already got a loss. Iowa could still be in it, I would say. Wisconsin's garbage. Indiana and Nebraska aren't going to win it. That's for sure. Not Indiana. Nebraska's not going to win it. Indiana's in the East. What am I talking about? The only other team right now that I could see really challenging you guys for that spot is Illinois. But Minnesota, I'm really disappointed in you guys. I was riding high on Minnesota. I was saying Minnesota is a top 10, top 15 school. Top 10, top 15 team. They're going to just blow out the rest of the teams in the West and go all the way. And you know what? They might still do that. You know, Purdue tends to give teams a tough time, and they lose in a fluky game, and they end up just going right back to doing what they were doing weeks prior. I mean, let's not forget, this is a team that that was shutting out Michigan State. I know Michigan State's not good. But you know, Minnesota, I'm still hopeful for them. They're going to be out of the rankings. And my good friend Evan Chino, guy I went to the Michigan-UConn game with, good friend, he was telling me over the phone earlier today, he goes, and I didn't even think about this, but he says as soon as a good team in the Big Ten West wins enough games, it gets ranked, they lose immediately after they get ranked. And it's a running thing, and it's true. It has happened. I've gone back and looked at it, and that's just been the case. I mean, I don't know what it is, but Minnesota falls victim again to Purdue and to the curse of a ranked West team, I guess. I'm sure Minnesota will go back to doing what they do next week. Who do they play? They're actually on a bye week next week. Then they got Illinois. That's a big one. Minnesota, Illinois, watch that game in 2 weeks. That'll be a big, big, big game. Oh, Nebraska, you gotta win. I'm proud of you guys. Honestly, Nebraska, I'm proud of you guys. You got the win. You look pretty good, too. I really like Casey Thompson. I'm really not trying to troll or make fun of you guys. I've been crapping on Nebraska all season, just being like they're garbage. But obviously, this bye week helped. I know Indiana's not a good football team. Let's be real. Indiana's not a good football team, but they do have that one conference win, right? Don't they? Who'd they beat? They beat Illinois. They beat Illinois. And then, you know, they lost to Cincinnati last week, but that was their only loss coming into this game. Cincinnati's not good. I mean, Cincinnati may not be bad, but look at where they were at last year compared to this year. No one's talking about Cincinnati anymore. But hey, Nebraska, you got the win. I gotta give it to you. You got a conference win. Something you really... Did you do that at all last year? I don't think you got a conference win last year, now that I'm thinking about it. You came close to getting conference wins, but you never did. But you did this week, so congratulations to you. You should win again next week. If you play like that, you should win again next week against Rutgers. I believe you got Rutgers at home. No, it's on the road. I apologize. It's in Piscataway. Nebraska. Yeah, you guys played a really good game today. I was watching kind of the game cast of this game. It was tied at 21 for like 18 years. And then Nebraska scored a couple touchdowns, pulled away. I thought this game, honestly, was going to go into overtime the way that third quarter went. There's just, like, nothing going on in that third quarter. There was 6 scores in the first half, and then nothing in the third quarter. So, I mean, but Nebraska pulled away, shut Indiana out in the second half, and looked good. From what I've seen, from what the videos and highlights I've seen, I didn't watch this game. I was going back and forth between the Georgia and Missouri game and the Clemson NC State game. Both of those games ended up going to the higher ranked team, the win. But yeah, Nebraska was another game that was just kind of going on that was a pretty decent matchup. But yeah, Nebraska, you look good. You got Rutgers on the road next week. You should win that game. I don't see why you wouldn't win that game. You looked like you were a team good enough to beat Rutgers, but we'll see. We'll see next week. Indiana, you got Michigan next week, so you got it at home, so I guess that's the most positive thing I could say about that. I don't know. Indiana always gives us issues, no matter how good we are and how bad they are, so if it's close, it's close. I still feel like we're going to win this game, regardless. Maryland beat Michigan State. Michigan State, man. Michigan State is absolutely pitifully bad. And I feel like I'm a broken record by saying this. But Michigan State is absolutely horrible. That pass defense is one of the worst in the country. I mean, it's just pathetically bad. Tua Tagovailoa had over 300 passing yards again this week. I believe he did that last week against Michigan as well. So it's not like it's the most crazy thing that he did. Did he do that last week? No, he actually didn't. He had 207 yards passing. So never mind, I was wrong. Apologies. But he had 314 yards passing today. And this wasn't a game where it was just passing the ball. They could run the ball too. It was Littleton had 19 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. So Michigan State, not only can they not stop the pass, but they can't stop the run either. 27-13 is your final in College Park. I believe that's where Maryland plays. College Park in Baltimore, Maryland. Michigan State is absolutely horrible. Right now, they are the worst team in the Big Ten East when it comes to at least rankings. I'm not saying they are the worst team in the East, but when it comes to the Big Ten standings, they are the worst team in the conference. They are 2-3. Mel Tucker's getting paid $95 million for this. So I mean that's good for him, I guess. But Michigan State, man, their schedule doesn't get any easier. Let's take a look at this schedule. So next week they play Ohio State at home. I guess the best thing I can say about that is that they're at home. I expect them to pretty much have a repeat of last year. Then after that they play Wisconsin, so you know maybe they can win that one. I mean, I don't know. That'll be a matchup hell right there. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very good game. Both teams are horrible. Then they got Michigan on the road. Then they got Illinois. Illinois is really good. Rutgers, so you should win that one. Indiana and Penn State at the end of the year. That's Michigan State's remaining schedule. Not easy. Not easy. You got to play Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. The 3 5-0 teams in the Big Ten East, you still got to play them, and you're 2-3. And some of those other games I could see you losing as well. If you can't beat Maryland, you can't beat those other 3 teams. I'm sorry. You might be able to beat one of them. You know, you never know. But you're not winning all 3 of them, or even 2 of those games. At best, you win one of those games. Michigan State's really bad. And their offense isn't even any better. I watched this whole entire game. Peyton Thorne is... Man, it won't even show me Peyton Thorne's stats. Oh, I wish I could... Can I look at it, please? Peyton Thorne, 27 for 44, 221 yards and a touchdown. Stats don't look horrible. My computer tried to give me a seizure there for a second. Peyton Thorne's stats don't look horrible. But if you watch this game, he didn't play good. Maryland wins it. I'm not surprised. This is a game that we were going into where Taulia Tagovailoa consistently throws for 300-plus yards a game. Michigan State is the type of school that will allow over 300-plus yards a game because of how bad that pass D is. But the rush D isn't good either. And this is the thing I've heard about before with Michigan State. And no, Michigan State's not our big losers this week. I just really need to talk about this. I guess you can assume now who the big losers are. We're going to be talking about them next. It's the last game we got to talk about. But Michigan State last year, their pass defense was really bad last year too. But the thing is they had a really great rush defense. So no one can run the ball on them. Not even Michigan can run the ball on them last year. And Michigan can run the ball on everybody last year, including Ohio State and including Iowa. Michigan State didn't allow Michigan much of anything running the ball last year. That was the thing. Michigan State was so good at rush defense, all they really needed to prepare for was the pass defense. And on offense, while they weren't great on offense, they had Kenneth Walker who carried them through every game. Why do you think they got to where they were? This year, they don't have Kenneth Walker. They went through the transfer portal again, but they didn't strike magic like they did last year. Kenneth Walker's gone. They've got a decent quarterback, or a decent running back at best. They have a below-average quarterback. Their D-line can't stop the pass, and their secondary, or their D-line can't stop the rush, and their secondary can't stop the pass. And what you got there is a recipe for disaster, especially being in the Big Ten East with teams like Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Michigan State, you're horrible. You're going to lose again next week to Ohio State and go 2-4. Garbage. Maryland looked really good. You got Purdue next week, so watch that one too. I don't know. Purdue usually doesn't do this 2 weeks in a row. I expect Maryland to win at home next week. So we'll see. But Maryland looked really good today. Taulia Tagovailoa looked really good. Defense played really good against Michigan State. But what is that really saying? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for our Big Ten losers this week. Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Badgers. Oh, man, I could have put Michigan State in your spot. I could have put Minnesota in your spot. I could have put Indiana in your spot, even, for losing to Nebraska, a horrible team. But I didn't do that. Why didn't I do that? Well, I expected Michigan State to lose. Nebraska was favored against Indiana. And you just kind of expect this out of Purdue. Doesn't mean it should happen, but, you know, I went into this game expecting, you know, to be like, this is scary. I probably said it last week, too. And and this is a game Wisconsin went into favored by 6. Favored by 6.5 in this game. But even I was telling myself, Illinois can win this game. Clearly, they can win this game. I think they're good enough to beat Wisconsin. But when I was saying that, I was basically saying they're good enough to beat Wisconsin, but it's going to be close. This wasn't even close. 34-10. Wisconsin lost by 24 points to Illinois at home. And this isn't knocking Illinois. Illinois, you played a great game. You are right now looking like the best team in the West. I still don't think you'll win the West. I think Minnesota's going to win it still. Wisconsin is horrible. They're horrible. I could go on and on how terrible the Big Ten West is. Let's look at this Big Ten West. Nebraska. Nebraska has been horrible for most of the year. Beating Indiana, I mean, that's your best win. Whatever, but it's still Indiana. Wisconsin, you lost to Washington State. You got blown out by Ohio State. Now you're getting blown out by Illinois. Minnesota, you lost to Purdue. Purdue, you lose too. Northwestern's horrible. Don't even get me started. Iowa's not horrible, but Iowa is still not great. I don't know how Iowa expects to be competitive against top-tier teams like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, teams like that with an offense like they do. I've been saying this for weeks. And when you look at the Big Ten West, you can really only say, even right now, that there's only a couple of teams, maybe, who are good. Minnesota and Illinois. And so far, Illinois has looked, today at least, they looked better than any of the other West teams. Didn't think I'd be saying that this year. I really thought, this was going to be typical. Wisconsin, Iowa would be like fighting for that top spot like they always did, like they did last year. Maybe I was like, maybe, a Minnesota or whatever, or Illinois, they'll try and fight, but they won't make it. Right now, Minnesota and Illinois are the best looking teams in the West. But after today, it's still Illinois. To me, it's Illinois. Now, when the season comes too, I still think Minnesota is going to win the West. But do you think Minnesota is going to win a Big Ten championship game? Heck no, they're not going to win a Big Ten championship game. If they played any of the other 5-0 teams in the East, they're not winning that game. You think Minnesota is going to beat Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State? No. No, they're not. They're not good enough to beat those three teams. Minnesota's a good team, but they're not that good. If they were that good, they wouldn't have lost to Purdue. Purdue is too inconsistent to be a good team. Purdue is too good to be at the top of the West. Yeah, they'll win a game here or there that they shouldn't be winning, but then they'll go up the week before or the week after and lose to somebody they shouldn't lose to. Illinois, absolutely, but here I'll go on a tangent some other time about that. Illinois looked really, really good. They looked really, really good. They had their way with Wisconsin. They did whatever they want, and they beat the snot out of them. They always say Wisconsin's a tough place to play, but it seems like every year now, Wisconsin's losing big at home. I don't know why. They lost huge at home to Michigan last year, right? It was Michigan. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Notre Dame big. I think that was at Notre Dame, though. I could be wrong. I mean, Wisconsin, man. I mean, I was saying last week, Ohio State's win over Wisconsin was super impressive, and it's still impressive the way they dominate. I'm not taking that away from Ohio State either, as much as I would like to. I'm a Michigan fan, let's be real. But Wisconsin's horrible. They're horrible. I can't even begin to explain how terrible they are. They're 2-3. Wisconsin's 2-3. They went into this game 2-2, and I was still considering them, a contender for the West. That is how bad the West is. They got Northwestern on the road next week. Will they even win that? I think they will. But I thought they were going to win today. They did not. Wisconsin, you're absolutely horrible. You couldn't score any points if your life depended on it in this game. I mean, Graham Mertz didn't look horrible. I mean, his stats aren't bad. I didn't really watch the game. I can really only go off of the stats. I don't know how bad or good he really looked. All I know is that you couldn't score, and you lost big time to Illinois. Oh. And you were losing 14-10 at halftime. So don't try and say that you guys were in it at one point. I mean, you were at halftime, but I mean, you guys were, the second half came around, you were never competitive. Wisconsin, you're done. Your Big Ten West hopes, while they're still clearly alive, if you guys win the rest of your games somehow, I mean, that's not happening, then you can win the West. Let's see, what's your schedule? You play Northwestern on the road. You've got Michigan State on the road. You've got Purdue at home, Maryland at home, Iowa on the road, Nebraska on the road, at Minnesota at home. So you can win some of these games. This is not the toughest schedule in the world. Maryland, Iowa, and Minnesota may be your toughest game. Obviously, Minnesota is your toughest game for the rest of the season right now. As we speak. But, yeah, Wisconsin, you're absolutely horrible. You're the Big Ten losers of the week. You're joining the list with 4 other Big Ten schools. Week 1, it was Iowa for barely beating South Dakota State. So you don't have to... You can make the list of loser, like the Big Ten loser of the week, and you don't even have to win. You can just win, but look really bad against a really bad school that you should have destroyed. Iowa was in week 1. Nebraska, I believe, was week 2 when they lost to Georgia Southern. Absolutely pitiful. Week 3, I believe, was Northwestern for losing to... Who'd they lose to? Like Southern Illinois or something like that? Yeah. And then week 4, it was Michigan State for getting blown out by Minnesota. Again, nothing taken away from Minnesota. And not judging it based on the winning team's opponent or the winning team or how good they are. I'm judging on how the loser played. And then this week it's Wisconsin for getting blown out by Illinois. All right. That is the recap for this week. Next week, we got some big games. Friday, Nebraska and Rutgers. Nebraska needs to win this game because they need to keep that momentum going. If they want to be, they're obviously not going to the Big Ten Championship. Don't make me laugh. They're not going anywhere near that. But if they want to have a decent season, if they want to put Scott Frost and that whole disaster behind them, they need to keep winning like they did today. Rutgers needs this win because they're horrible and they're 0-2 in the Big Ten right now. They have losses to Iowa and Ohio State. They got to win this game. Michigan, Indiana next week. Michigan needs to win it to remain, in the college football playoff contention, to stay in the Big Ten East, the top of the Big Ten East with Penn State and Ohio State. Indiana needs a bounce back. That's pretty much all they need. Then we got Purdue and Maryland. That should be a Maryland-dominated win right there. I mean, like, Maryland should win that game at home. Purdue doesn't usually win 2 games they shouldn't win in a row. They usually reserve that for one school. I see Maryland winning next week. Yes, I'm calling Minnesota's loss a fluke. Because that's what it was for Ohio State in 2018. That was a fluke. Wisconsin, Northwestern. Wisconsin just needs a win, honestly. Northwestern just needs a win, honestly. That game is just 2 teams that need a win desperately. One of them's going to get it. So, I mean, that's good news for one of those schools. Ohio State and Michigan State, that'll be a massacre. And then Iowa and Illinois. So that'll be interesting too. Illinois is still fighting for that Big Ten West spot, and if they want to be in that conversation, they need to beat a team like Iowa. We'll see how it goes for Illinois. I'm honestly going to take Iowa in that game, just because I think Iowa has vastly improved since week 1. Offensively, they've looked a lot better. But if Illinois wins next week and they win big, then I need to shut my mouth, and I've been an Illinois doubter. I need to stop doubting them. I will fully admit I was wrong and that I shouldn't have doubted them if they can win next week. So, but yeah, that's the games for next week in the Big Ten. Let's talk about just kind of the rest of the FBS, I guess, like we usually do here. So we got a game tomorrow, I believe. There's actually some games going on right now. Oregon's up 10-3 on Stanford. USC is up 21-17 over Arizona State. What are you doing, USC? And Arizona's beating Colorado. Who cares? Week 6. Not week 6. What the fuck am I doing? Come on. Pardon my language. Yeah, here we go. Georgia barely beat Missouri today. What am I gonna say? Missouri looked good in this game. I know Missouri's not a good football team. Georgia's got a lot of things they gotta fix. They kind of came back in this second half and kind of just pulled away, took the lead and just kind of pulled away. After that, they looked way better in the second half than they did the first, but it still took them 3.5 quarters. It took them till, what was it, 4 minutes left in the fourth, or 6 minutes left in the fourth for them to take the lead and hold it for the rest of the game. I mean, Missouri was leading for like 98% of this game. So, but Georgia pulled it out, won this game. I think they should go down a spot in the rankings. Alabama should go up to #1 after absolutely demolishing Arkansas, a ranked team, mind you, a ranked team, 49-26. Clemson beat NC State 30-20. I was hoping for a better game, but it seemed like Clemson was just going to dominate. Clemson's one of the best teams in the country, too. They should obviously be in that conversation. Ohio State is another one that is in that conversation. They looked really good. Michigan looked really good. All these teams are in the conversation still. Even Georgia's still in it. Let's be real. They're not out of playoff contention or out of any race because they almost lost to Missouri. Ole Miss and Kentucky was a decent, pretty good game, actually. Ole Miss ended up winning this one. Kentucky, I haven't really been talking about it, but Kentucky, to me, has been overrated. But this is one of the better games they played. They ended up losing, though. Oklahoma State is really good. They beat Baylor today 36-25, but Oklahoma State was up way bigger than that. Baylor kind of came back and tried to mount a comeback, but it didn't end up happening. Utah beat the brakes off Oregon State. Mississippi State beat Texas A&M 42-24. Texas A&M is not good. They should not be ranked anymore. Oklahoma. Wasn't Oklahoma ranked like number 6 last week? Going into that Kansas State game? Wow, is Oklahoma's defense bad? 55-24 loss to TCU? What is happening to Oklahoma? Oklahoma already has their second loss, and they, to me, are not a ranked team anymore. Wake Forest beat Florida State 31-21. Georgia Tech beat a ranked team. Georgia Tech beat a ranked team. Pittsburgh 26-21. Pittsburgh, what the frick happened? Kansas State beat Texas Tech 37-28. Georgia State beat Army 31-14. Boston College won. Air Force. Memphis, James Madison. Eastern Michigan got a win. Kansas. Kansas is 5-0. Let's go Jayhawks, man. I'm rooting for Kansas. I was Kansas' schedule is not easy, though. So, I mean, if Kansas survives this next slate of games, I would be shocked. They've got TCU next week. Then they got Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State. That is a super tough stretch. right there. Not necessarily the, but the TCU game will be tough. Oklahoma, that'll probably still be tough. Baylor will be really hard. Oklahoma State, I don't see Kansas winning that game. Then they got Texas Tech, which will still be difficult. Texas, that'll still be difficult. And Kansas State. That's not an easy remaining schedule, but I mean, honestly, I could see Kansas losing the rest of their games, as much as I hate to say it. But even if they did finish 5-7, that would be the best record they've accumulated in many, many, many years. So, I mean, crazier things have happened. Where was I? I was looking at Kansas. UConn got a win today over Fresno State, 19-14. So there's that. North Carolina had a defense this week. They destroyed Virginia Tech 41-10. Toledo beat Central Michigan. Bowling Green beat Akron. Buffalo beat Miami of Ohio. Kent State beat Ohio. Yeah, whatever. Syracuse beat something called Wagner. The hell is a Wagner for the second time? I mean, I don't think anyone cares about the rest of these games, honestly. There's a lot of games that played today, though. Yeah, well, Florida plays tomorrow against Eastern Washington. They're favored by 31. All right. This was an extra long video. I thought this would be shorter because there was less games to talk about, but it ended up going for another 10 or so minutes longer than it usually does. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Go watch my Michigan video if you haven't already and if you're interested. About an 8-minute video where I just talk about Michigan's game over Iowa. All right. And subscribe, like the video, all that jazz. Enjoy the rest of your nights. I'm gonna watch some NFL football tomorrow. I'm gonna watch my Patriots probably get blown out by the Green Bay, so I'm gonna look forward to that tomorrow. All right, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.